Listen closely, because what I'm about to share will challenge everything you think you know about the Sigma male mindset. You see yourself as unstoppable, the lone wolf who thrives in isolation, the strategist who never breaks, the man who operates on a different frequency than the rest of society. But here's the brutal truth that nobody talks about. Even the most disciplined Sigma reaches a point where the tank hits empty. And when that happens, that's when the real test begins. Most content about Sigma males glorifies the strength, the independence, the calculated detachment. But today, we're going into uncharted territory. We're exploring the moment when the armor gets too heavy to carry, because understanding what happens when a Sigma gets tired isn't about weakness. It's about mastering the full spectrum of your power. If you're ready to go beyond the surface-level Sigma content and dive into the psychology that actually matters, then you're in the right place. And if this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is dedicated to the real conversations that transform boys into men and men into forces of nature. Let's begin. 1. The invisible breaking point. Here's what nobody tells you about being a Sigma male. Your greatest strength becomes your most dangerous blind spot. You've built an empire of self-reliance. You've mastered the art of operating alone. You've trained yourself to need nothing and no one. But there's an invisible line you cross without even knowing it, and by the time you realize you've crossed it, you're already on the other side. The invisible breaking point doesn't announce itself with fanfare. There's no alarm that goes off, no warning system. It's subtle, insidious, and by design, completely hidden from your conscious awareness. Why? Because you've conditioned yourself to ignore the signals. Think about it. When was the last time you actually checked in with yourself? Not the surface level, am I getting things done check, but the deep, honest assessment of your internal state. Most Sigmas can't remember. And that's exactly the problem. The breaking point starts small. You notice you're more irritable than usual, but you dismiss it as stress. Your focus isn't as sharp, but you push through with discipline. Sleep becomes fragmented, but you tell yourself you'll rest when the mission is complete. Small cracks appear in your routine, but your ego convinces you that you're still in control. Here's a practical example. Take Marcus, a 34-year-old entrepreneur who embodies Sigma traits. For 3 years, he built his business alone. No partners, no investors, minimal staff. Every decision, every strategy, every problem solved by him. His friends noticed he stopped responding to messages. His family complained they never saw him. But Marcus saw this as necessary sacrifice. He was operating at peak efficiency, or so he thought. The invisible breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in a meeting with a potential client, a meeting he'd prepared for meticulously. 30 minutes in, he realized he couldn't remember anything the client had just said. His mind was blank, not distracted, not wandering, completely empty. The exhaustion he'd been suppressing for years had finally hijacked his cognitive function. This is what fatigue does to the Sigma brain. It doesn't just slow you down, it starts making decisions for you. Your subconscious takes over, and suddenly you're operating on autopilot in situations that require precision. The irony. You built your entire identity on being strategic and intentional, but fatigue strips away both. The breaking point manifests differently for each Sigma, but the pattern is universal. Your tolerance for incompetence, already low, becomes toxic. Your ability to mask emotions in professional settings starts failing. Your decision-making, once your greatest asset, becomes reactive instead of proactive. You start avoiding situations that require high-level thinking because some part of you knows you're running on empty. And here's the most dangerous part. You still perform. You're still getting results. To the outside world, you look exactly the same. This is why it's invisible. A Sigma in breakdown mode can still outperform average people on their best day, but you're not competing against average. You're competing against your own potential, and fatigue is stealing from you silently. The breaking point isn't when you fail publicly. It's when you stop enjoying your victories. It's when achievements feel hollow. It's when you realize you've been grinding for so long that you've forgotten why you started. That's the moment you've crossed the line. Recognition is the first step toward mastery. If you're reading this and feeling an uncomfortable recognition, that's good. That's awareness. That's the beginning of taking back control. Because once you see the invisible breaking point for what it is, you can finally do something about it. 2. When silence becomes suffocation, silence is the Sigma's sanctuary. It's where you strategize, where you recharge, where you find clarity in a world drowning in noise. You've weaponized solitude, turned it into your competitive advantage. While others need constant validation and social interaction, you thrive in the quiet. But here's the paradox that will shake your foundation. The same silence that empowers you can slowly suffocate you. When a Sigma gets tired, something fundamental shifts in how silence feels. What once felt like freedom starts feeling like isolation. What once felt like peace starts feeling like emptiness. And you won't recognize this transition immediately because you've spent years convincing yourself that you don't need anyone or anything. Let me paint you the picture of what this looks like in real time. You come home after a brutal day. In your prime state, this silence is golden. It's where you decompress, strategize for tomorrow, and reconnect with your purpose. But when fatigue sets in deep enough, you walk through that door, and the silence doesn't embrace you. It confronts you. The walls feel closer. The quiet isn't peaceful. It's loud with the absence of everything you've sacrificed to be here. Your thoughts, instead of being your strategic allies, become critics. The inner dialogue that once motivated you now exhausts you. And the most terrifying part? You still can't bring yourself to reach out. Your Sigma identity won't allow it. This is where the suffocation becomes dangerous. Other personality types have release valves built into their social structures. They call friends when stressed. They seek comfort in relationships. They verbalize their struggles. But you've systematically removed those options from your life. You've prided yourself on being the person who doesn't need those crutches. Consider Daniel, a 29-year-old Sigma who worked in tech. He spent 18 months developing an app completely solo, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. His apartment became his universe, coding station, gym equipment, meal prep area. Everything optimized for productivity. Zero social obligations, pure efficiency. Month 15, something changed. The silence he'd curated so carefully became oppressive. He'd finish a coding session and sit in complete quiet, and instead of clarity he felt nothing. Not sadness, not loneliness in the traditional sense, just a hollow absence. He couldn't even identify what was missing because he'd convinced himself nothing was supposed to be there. Daniel started leaving podcasts playing in the background, then YouTube videos, then the TV, anything to fill the void. But here's what he didn't realize. He wasn't seeking noise. He was seeking connection. His Sigma framework had no protocol for this. So he did what most tired Sigmas do. He ignored it and pushed harder. The suffocation intensifies because you're fighting against your own nature. You've built an identity around not needing people, but human beings are neurologically wired for connection. Your brain doesn't care about your Sigma philosophy. It needs social interaction to regulate stress hormones, to process complex emotions, to maintain psychological health. When you deny this need long enough, the silence stops being neutral. It becomes a prison you've built with your own hands. And the most devastating part? You hold the key, but your ego won't let you turn it. Admitting you need connection feels like admitting weakness, so you suffocate slowly, convincing yourself this is just another test of your strength. Here's what actually happens neurologically. Prolonged isolation combined with chronic stress creates a feedback loop. Cortisol levels remain elevated. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest and recovery, never fully engages. The silence that should allow you to reset becomes the environment where your stress compounds. You start having conversations with yourself that go in circles. You replay situations obsessively. You analyze problems from every angle, but arrive at the same conclusions. This isn't strategic thinking anymore. This is your mind trapped in patterns it can't escape because it lacks external input to break the cycle. The suffocation manifests in strange ways. You might find yourself staying up later than necessary, not because you're productive, but because sleep means confronting the silence in its purest form. You might overwork deliberately, creating artificial urgency to avoid the empty hours. You might develop elaborate routines that consume time, not because they're effective, but because they prevent stillness. And here's the cruel irony: the more suffocating the silence becomes, the more you retreat into it. It's a defense mechanism. The outside world feels unpredictable, chaotic, demanding. At least in your silence you control everything. Except you don't. The silence is controlling you now. The transformation from sanctuary to suffocation is complete when you realize you're not choosing solitude anymore. You're hiding. You're not strategically withdrawing. You're retreating from life itself. The Sigma strength of independence has become the Sigma trap of isolation. But recognition is power. Understanding that silence can suffocate doesn't mean you need to become a social butterfly. It means you need to audit your relationship with solitude honestly. Are you using it, or is it using you? Are you choosing it from strength, or defaulting to it from exhaustion? The answers will tell you everything you need to know about where you are on the Sigma fatigue spectrum. 3. The mask nobody sees cracking. Every Sigma wears a mask. Not the fake persona kind, something far more sophisticated. It's the mask of composure, of having everything under control, of being unshakable regardless of circumstances. You've worn it so long it feels like your actual face. People see you as the rock, the one who never breaks. The man who operates above the emotional chaos that consumes everyone else. But when a Sigma gets tired, that mask starts developing cracks. And here's the psychological nightmare: you're the last person to notice. The mask isn't something you consciously put on each morning. It's been integrated into your identity through years of conditioning. Every time you remained calm in crisis, every time you solved problems while others panicked, every time you kept your emotions in check when circumstances screamed for reaction, you reinforced this mask until it became indistinguishable from who you are. This is why the cracking is so dangerous. You don't feel it happening. There's no mirror that shows you the micro-expressions of exhaustion slipping through. No feedback mechanism that alerts you when your legendary composure starts showing fault lines. The mask cracks from the inside out, and by the time others notice, the damage is already extensive. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Meet James, a 41-year-old Sigma who managed a crisis response team. His entire professional reputation was built on being the calmest person in the room when everything went wrong. Clients specifically requested him because while their world was burning, James was ice. For 7 years, this worked flawlessly. Then the mask started cracking. It began with small things: a sarcastic comment that was slightly too sharp, a moment of visible frustration when a team member asked a repetitive question, a meeting where his usual measured tone had an edge others couldn't quite place. None of these were dramatic breaks, just hairline fractures that people noticed but couldn't explain. James didn't see any of it. In his mind, he was performing exactly as always. The internal experience of exhaustion doesn't always translate to external awareness. Your brain, desperate to maintain the identity you've built, works overtime to preserve the mask even as it's disintegrating. The cracks show up in patterns. Your poker face, once impenetrable, starts leaking micro-expressions. Your response time, normally instantaneous, develops delays. Your legendary patience shows limits that never existed before. Your ability to read rooms and adjust your presence becomes inconsistent. Some days you're still the old you, other days something's off and everyone can sense it but you. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Emotional regulation requires massive cognitive resources. When you're operating at full capacity, you have bandwidth to spare. You can monitor yourself, adjust in real time, and maintain the mask effortlessly. But fatigue depletes this bandwidth. Your brain starts making executive function trade-offs, and the mask is usually what gets sacrificed first because your brain prioritizes immediate survival over social presentation. The most painful part? The people who know you best notice the cracks long before you do. Your team sees that your decision-making isn't as sharp. Your close contacts notice you're slightly more reactive. Your family observes that you're physically present but emotionally distant. But here's the Sigma trap. These people don't usually say anything. Why? Because you've trained them that you don't need feedback, that you have everything handled, that you're the one who solves problems, not the one who has them. So you continue operating with a cracking mask, completely unaware. You still get results, still hit targets, still appear functional. But the energy cost of maintaining the illusion is exponentially higher than it used to be. You're not just doing the work anymore. You're doing the work plus the constant maintenance of appearing like someone who can do the work effortlessly. This is where Sigma fatigue becomes truly insidious. You're fighting a two-front war. The actual challenges in your life and the performance of being someone unaffected by those challenges. Every interaction becomes theater. Every conversation requires you to monitor yourself, to ensure no cracks show, to maintain the identity everyone expects. The mask cracks in your private moments too, but you're alone, so you don't witness them. You snap at yourself mentally with a viciousness you'd never direct at others. You lie in bed with anxiety running loops your conscious mind denies exists. You stand in the shower and feel nothing, not relaxation, not stress, just a hollow emptiness where your drive used to be. And still, you show up the next day with the mask in place. Because that's what Sigmas do. The mask isn't optional. It's the load-bearing wall of your entire identity structure. If it falls, you believe everything falls with it. So you reinforce it with discipline, with willpower, with sheer, stubborn refusal to acknowledge the foundation is crumbling. But here's what nobody tells you. The mask wasn't meant to be permanent. It's a tool, not an identity. And when it starts cracking, it's not a failure. It's information. Your system is telling you that the cost of maintaining the performance has exceeded the benefit. The cracks are your subconscious staging an intervention your conscious mind is too proud to accept. The tragedy is watching Sigmas double down when the mask cracks. They don't adjust course. They apply more pressure, more discipline, more control, more isolation. They treat the cracking mask like a weakness to overcome rather than a warning to heed. And that's when the cracks become fractures, and the fractures become complete breaks. You can't prevent the mask from cracking when you're genuinely exhausted, but you can change your relationship with it. You can recognize that showing the real experience beneath the mask, selectively, strategically, isn't weakness. It's evolution. It's the difference between a Sigma who breaks in silence and a Sigma who transforms through self-awareness. The question isn't whether your mask will crack. When fatigue is real, it will. The question is, will you notice in time to do something about it, or will you wait until others have to pick up the pieces? 4. Strategic retreat versus actual collapse. This is where most content about Sigma males gets it catastrophically wrong. They glorify the strategic retreat, the calculated withdrawal, the tactical regrouping. But when a Sigma gets tired, the line between strategic retreat and actual collapse becomes dangerously blurred. Your ego will rebrand collapse as strategy, and you'll believe it, because admitting you've hit your limit contradicts everything you've built. Strategic retreat is proactive. You see the battlefield shifting and choose to withdraw while you still have resources. You retreat to something, a better position, recovery, a new strategy. There's intentionality and planning. Collapse is reactive. Your body and mind simply stop cooperating. You're not retreating to something, you're fleeing from everything. There's no plan because there's no capacity left. Here's how you distinguish them. Strategic retreat energizes you. Even pulling back, you feel restoration beginning. There's relief and anticipation. You visualize the next phase. Collapse exhausts you further. The withdrawal doesn't restore, it just slows the bleeding. You feel guilty and can't see the future. Strategic retreat is selective. You identify what's draining you and cut with precision. Collapse is wholesale. You cut everything, good and bad together, because you can't distinguish anymore. Strategic retreat has a timeline. You know you're pulling back for specific weeks or months with milestones. Collapse is indefinite, until things get better without definition of what better means. Take two Sigmas, both burned out, both withdrawing. Sigma A takes a planned 3-week break, delegates tasks, sets systems for emergencies, actually disconnects, returns with renewed focus and implements changes. Sigma B randomly stops showing up, still checks email obsessively but doesn't respond, feels guilty constantly but can't engage. 3 months later, same exhausted state with damaged relationships, same withdrawal, completely different processes. Your intelligence works against you here. You're so good at creating narratives that you convince yourself collapse is strategy. But your body knows the difference. Strategic retreat feels like relief. Collapse feels like drowning in slow motion. True strategic retreat requires strength you only have before complete depletion. If you're so tired you can barely function and pulling back from everything, that's not strategy, that's survival. There's no shame in survival, but there is danger in calling it something else. The question, am I retreating to regroup or collapsing and rebranding? The answer determines whether your withdrawal leads to resurgence or just postpones the reckoning. 5. What Sigma fatigue reveals about strength. Here's the shift that changes everything. Sigma fatigue isn't the opposite of strength. It's the revelation of what strength actually means. When you get truly fatigued, you discover your definition of strength is incomplete. Fatigue strips away performance, ego, and narrative. It reveals truths about strength that success never could. First revelation, strength isn't infinite endurance. It's knowing when to stop. Elite athletes don't train through injuries. They know when to rest. Tomorrow's performance depends on today's recovery. The Sigma on fatigue hasn't learned this yet. Second revelation, strength isn't isolation. It's selective connection. True strength is recognizing when to operate alone and when to strategically engage support. The strongest Sigmas have trusted advisors. They've learned connection isn't weakness, it's force multiplication. Third revelation, strength isn't constant, it's cyclical. Human performance has seasons of output and seasons of recovery. Your brain has an adaptive curve. Push without recovery past the inflection point, and you enter damage. Fatigue is your system saying you've crossed that point. Fourth revelation, strength isn't suppressing emotions, it's processing them efficiently. True strength is feeling the emotion, understanding its message, and choosing your response. The tired Sigma just holds everything down with willpower, a finite resource. Fifth revelation, strength isn't proving yourself, it's knowing yourself. Who are you when you're not proving anything? The strongest Sigmas get tired, recognize it honestly, and adjust without losing their core. They're secure enough that recovery doesn't threaten their identity. Final revelation, strength is accepting you're human. You need sleep, recovery, connection, rest, and occasionally help. This doesn't make you less Sigma. It makes you a Sigma operating in reality rather than ideology. The Sigma who emerges from fatigue with these revelations isn't weaker. He's exponentially more powerful. His strength is reality-based, his endurance sustainable, his independence strategic rather than compulsive. Fatigue reveals that strength isn't what you thought, and that revelation might be the greatest gift your exhaustion gives you. 6. The comeback that redefines dominance. The comeback from true fatigue isn't just recovery, it's evolution. Real Sigmas transform through adversity. The comeback begins not when you feel better, but when you accept where you are and say, "This is my baseline, now what?" Phase 1 is radical simplification. Sort everything into critical, important, and everything else. Cut the third category completely. Cut 50% of important. You're left with essentials only. This creates the space recovery requires. Phase 2 is non-negotiable recovery. Sleep becomes sacred. 7 to 9 hours, same time nightly. Exercise becomes mandatory. Start with 20 minutes daily. Nutrition becomes intentional. These aren't optional. They're critical functions during comeback. Phase 3 is rebuilding cognitive capacity. Protect attention fanatically. Create 60 to 90-minute blocks of uninterrupted deep work, no multitasking. Reduce information consumption by 70%. Your brain needs space to process, not constantly consume. Phase 4 is selective re-engagement. After 60-90 days, add back capacity in 20% increments. But don't add what you cut. Add better things aligned with who you're becoming. Master one new commitment before adding the next. Phase 5 is integration of weakness into identity. The advanced move. Acknowledge your exhaustion threshold and build life to respect it. Create systems that prevent needing to push indefinitely. Delegate intelligently. Maintain strategic relationships. Schedule recovery like you schedule production. The comeback Sigma is more dangerous than the original because he's been to the edge with information. He knows his limits viscerally. He operates from wisdom, not ideology. 6 months in, you're at 70% of peak, but sustainable. 12 months in, you're exceeding old peaks from a completely different operating system. You've eliminated drains, built in recovery, developed self-awareness that prevents the next collapse. The comeback isn't about getting back to who you were. It's about using breakdown to breakthrough to who you're capable of becoming. Your fatigue becomes the catalyst for building something more durable, powerful, and sustainable. The comeback redefines what Sigma dominance means in the long game. And the long game is the only game that matters. So there you have it. What happens when a Sigma gets tired isn't a story of defeat. It's a revelation of what true strength actually means. You've learned that fatigue doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And how you handle that fatigue, that's what separates the authentic Sigma from the pretenders. The invisible breaking point teaches you self-awareness. The suffocating silence forces you to find new ways to recharge. The cracking mask reminds you that authenticity is more powerful than perfection. The strategic retreat becomes your greatest tactical advantage. The fatigue itself reveals depths of strength you didn't know existed. And the comeback that redefines not just your dominance, but your entire understanding of what it means to operate at the highest level. Remember this: every titan has felt exhaustion. Every legend has faced the moment where continuing seemed impossible. The difference is, they understood that rest isn't retreat and recovery isn't resignation. They understood that the Sigma path isn't about never getting tired. It's about knowing what to do when you are. If this video gave you a new perspective on the Sigma mindset, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because we're building a community of men who aren't afraid to explore the uncomfortable truths, the complex realities, and the advanced strategies that actually create lasting transformation. The content coming next will take you even deeper. Now go rest if you need to, then come back stronger. That's the Sigma way.